I temped quite a bit. I worked as like a temporary admin assistant, receptionist throughout the years because I knew I didn't want to do any sort of permanent 9 to 5 sort of role. I did not want to be there. Never really enjoyed it, but I didn't mind doing like short stints here and there. And I would go into various organizations, corporations, and I would just see the automatic reverence that people would pay to like the CEO or the line manager. And these people aren't necessarily even more experienced than you are sometimes. It was just, like you'd be in an elevator and somebody would be like, oh no, the CEO's getting in, and everyone almost cowers. You could even see in their posture. They go in on themselves. For who and for what?
Hey, Kelechi.
Hi.
Thank you so much for joining me. This video series is all about culture and how culture evolves and changes and how that impacts how we live our lives and how we work. And I'm particularly interested in culture at the moment because I think in the last few years we've seen how culture really has spiraled within like not almost every year, but every year things are changing and evolving, and the way that we live our lives is so different. So the people I'm speaking to in this video series are the people that I've met, or the people that I admire and I've spoken to before, who I feel like are real pioneers of culture and have that unique ability to kind of see what's coming because of the way that they are. And you're definitely one of those people who has this ability to see what's going on around us and kind of predict what's coming up next. So I just was so excited to speak to you. So I'd love for you to introduce yourself to everybody who's going to be watching this.
Okay. I'm Kelechi Okafor, and I write, direct, hosted a podcast called Say Your Mind. And yeah, I'm just out here.
What I think is so interesting is that you have this thing, what they call a portfolio career. Have you heard this?
Yeah.
Yeah. I only heard about it recently, and it really made me think about how you have so many different talents and how you tap into all of them. Well, maybe not all of them. There's probably more, but you explore and execute on the different talents that you have, which is just so incredible to watch. And you've had such an interesting journey. And I would love to know about your career, like what motivates you and what to continue to keep doing the work that you do. And also, is this the career plan that you saw for yourself?
What motivates me? I guess exploration motivates me. Anger motivates me. I guess it just depends. There are different, there's different fuel for different energy systems, right? So for different parts of or aspects of my career, there'll be a different fuel system that I'm using because that particular type of career requires a different energy system. But I feel like everything still comes down to a curiosity and devotion to advocacy for whatever the thing might be. But mainly it's about Black womanhood. But even saying that, I feel like I want to move away from it because it feels like a sense of martyrdom. And I think that people just use that term willy-nilly now when they might not necessarily actually be of service to Black women whatsoever. So I feel like for me, it is purely exploration, that I'm a soul having this human experience, and I'm blessed to have access to different types of like channels within myself to express myself through. So I would say that that's like the motivator or the motivation that I have. I mentioned anger earlier. That feeds into how I even opened the pole dance studios. When I introduced myself, I didn't necessarily go, and I run a pole dance studio in Southeast London, Peckham. But it was because of the way that the pole dance industry was just so whitewashed and just weird, just very, very exclusionary, that it led to me opening my own studio in 2016. And, I've had a pole dance studio since. Where I go next with the studio, who's to know? But I'm proud of the fact that for the past 8 or so years, I've been able to have this space that was born from a space of anger at just the fact that Black women's bodies weren't necessarily celebrated or welcomed in certain spaces. And in terms of my career plan, I've never really had a career plan. I don't have a plan for the future. I just know that I feel like initially I thought, oh, I'm going to be an Academy Award winning actress and that's what I'm going to be doing. And then life was like, no, you're not. We're going to go and do all of these things instead, still using the same skill set, but using it very differently in terms of public speaking, being an orator, being able to express myself through my words and evoke something in the people that are watching, in the masses. And then my interest in terms of politics has grown as well. So I didn't plan any of this. Maybe I did in another realm, but I didn't plan any of this in a physical body. I've just always made the decision based on what has been presented to me at that moment in time.
I want to talk about two things that you mentioned then, because I love the explanation. One is about anger, and that as an emotion, and two, about taking opportunities when they come to you. Now, let's do anger first, because I love the emotion anger. I know it sounds weird to say it, but I am someone who's quite angry, because I feel like there's a lot to be angry about. But I understand that it has been politicized, and also it's weaponized against you, particularly if you're a Black woman. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to talk about ask you how you ignore those things and still use the anger that you feel to fuel you to do your best work.
I feel like for me, anger is useful. I know that it's termed as like a superficial emotion, that there's usually something else that you're feeling underneath, like sadness, grief, all of that stuff waiting for you under there. But I feel like anger, as you say, has been politicized and weaponized against Black women specifically in order to stop us from feeling the anger that we definitely rightfully deserve to feel about the state of the world. And I think that it can be a liberating force depending on how it's used. You can use it to destroy things and then build something new. Not feeling our anger leads to our overrepresentation and autoimmune diseases, as we're starting to see now, because you repress something so powerful in such a way, you turn it inwards on yourself. And of course, it's going to be something that then your cells in your body, they start to show that for you. So the expression of anger is necessary. Choosing where and how you express it, useful. Mine has always gone towards, because I think about astrology and Mars representing anger. My Mars sits in Capricorn in my 10th house of my career. So I express my anger through what I do in my career. I go to build better systems that aren't yet in place, or, and to criticize or critique the ones that are, in order to destroy them, so we have something new. So that's how mine has really sort of shown up, for the desire to have, better systems. But I feel like now I'm sort of, as I mentioned, anger being a surface emotion, I feel like I'm not so much in a space of anger right now. I think that for me, it's more of a space of sadness and contemplation, because if anger was the surface emotion, once you felt that and you felt that and you felt that for so long, you then have to go into what is this emotion covering? What is it signaling to you to look at? And it's a deep sadness really at the state of the world. And I think that, again, that becomes a different fuel system for then the work that one might go on to do next. But I feel like there are loads and loads and loads of Black people, specifically Black women, that first need to wear out anger as a fuel system first. Not that you ever leave it behind, but use a lot of it first, because they haven't used it at all, right? Yeah. So they would need to use that first, whereas I feel like I've moved on to another stage of our journey where it's more of a sadness now, and seeing what that sadness wants to communicate and where do I go with it from here.
That's really true, because I remember going to therapy, and one of those people that went to therapy, probably a bit too late in life now, think about it. I should have went much earlier. And I actually went, and every emotion they asked me was anger. My response was anger, 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 anger. And she said to me, this really lovely woman said to me, no, they talk in that way to just really try and help you understand, they're going to tell you something you probably don't want to hear. And she explained that beneath anger is deep sadness. And that was the first time I'd ever heard it. Mm-hmm. But it makes complete sense, because it's an expression of something else that you're feeling. And I feel exactly the same, is that the anger that I used to feel, that used to be so like aggressive, has definitely turned into sadness about the state of the world and the lack of energy that other people seem to have to change the circumstances they're in, which is precisely why I want to have these conversations that are very difficult for a lot of people to have. And I think that's probably one of the things that I enjoy doing, is having difficult conversations that don't feel difficult to me. They feel quite easy, and hopefully that encourages people to then have these more difficult conversations themselves, because they're only difficult if you make them difficult. I wanted to talk about, connect anger, into these opportunities that you make for yourself, because you said that it fuels the work that you want to do, into how it presents them. It's how it presents opportunities to you. For examples, like your books, how the anger then presented an opportunity to write.
Yeah, I think that just came from being very seen, I guess, on social media, and expressing my anger in a way that other, I guess, Black people resonated with. So they approached me with opportunities to express something. And I think that sometimes you can really only be angry about the things that you love. I love this world. I love us. I love humanity. So I will be angry at the state of what things are, because it's not fair. And so when Sarita Domingo, who's my editor, when she approached me and said, "Oh, would you like to write a short story for this anthology that I'm putting together, Love Stories by Women of Color?" I thought, that was
sorry,
great.
I didn't have that one. I put this one up and then I realized you're talking about the first one. Sorry.
And so, so The Watchers, that's in Edge of Here. That's the first story in Edge of Here, my collection of short stories. She asked me to write for Who's Loving You. That's the name of the anthology. And instantly I knew what I wanted to write, but I really appreciated that somebody saw beyond just, Kelechi's an angry Black woman, and thought, no, Kelechi's clearly somebody that loves deeply. And so let's get her to write something about love. And I don't think anybody expected the story that I ended up writing, which was The Watchers, because I think that when people perceive Black women sometimes and perceive Black women that are outspoken, they think that you can only be one dimensional, like your anger is one dimensional. It's not this multifaceted entity that you are able to expertly wield. They just think, you must just be like raving mad. So being able to present The Watchers, I think, shocked a lot of people. Being able to present Edge of Here shocked a lot of people, because I think that in terms of what I would have been expected to write, likely it would have been nonfiction, likely it would have been something very, very political and blah, blah, blah. But Edge of Here still holds my politics. It still holds my politics. It still holds my vision for the future, but it holds it in a place that I think that people have often overlooked regarding me, which is an immense capacity for love. So yeah, I think that came forward, my anger at the way that I was viewed growing up, being very athletic, very like energetic, brought about Strong Like Me. Because
this is my kid, by the way. This is literally Luna. She's exactly this kid. Strong, athletic.
And yeah, that's beautiful. And so I wanted to write that. So the little girls generally who are very, physically strong and fit, and they're just energetic and they want to do all of these things, aren't told that, you're behaving like a boy and no boy's going to want you if you're too this and you're too that. And it's also good for all children to read across the board, to be able to recognize the differences in themselves as with other people, and to celebrate that the same way, regardless. So anger can bring beautiful things about. We've been conditioned, I guess, in society, in this imperialist society, to be fearful of our anger, because if we ever knew the value of it, if we ever knew the power of it, especially if we bring all of our anger together against the state and the authorities, then that would be a really, really challenging situation for the powers that be. So we are all encouraged, outside of being Black women, across the board, we're encouraged to not feel our anger or use the anger to destroy ourselves, because the type of anger would be the mass shooters that we see, who happen to be overwhelmingly white male, who go out and that's anger, but they're not stopping their anger, because their anger instills fear in other people. And fear is a very good thing to be able to use if you're trying to control masses of people.
You said so much that I want to talk about. So first of all, I understand that you say that there are people who have certain expectations from you because of the way that you may communicate. But what I always hear is a vulnerability. And that's what I read in the books, is this vulnerability, and not a weak vulnerability or anything like that, but just a vulnerability of compassion and empathy. And I think what I love about Strong Like Me is that as the story unfolds, she is constantly needing to be reassured, because she is hearing from other people things about herself which are untrue, which is very common in childhood, and how she gets that reassurance time after time from different people who love her, which I think is just such an important story for children, which is why I understand why you say it's for all children, because we all have these things that people will try to diminish and try to take away, when really it's, this is her power. And a lot of people are frightened of other people's powers. So what they do is they project, even to small children, they project, and this is, I think, so relatable for every child, especially ones with special gifts as well, because people don't like children who are gifted for some reason. I wanted to talk to you about the dynamics of power, right? Because you spoke about the state and how understanding how the state's job is to keep us in this position of fear. So we don't understand that actually the dynamics of power are meant to be in our favor, but at the moment they're not, because of the tools that they use. And I wanted to talk to you about like power and hierarchy, and how you, seemingly to me, but I could be wrong, right? How you manage to understand power and hierarchy in such an advanced way, and also how you navigate that in the different spaces and the different areas of your career, because power and hierarchy is kind of always the same. It just kind of wears a different suit.
It's true. That's true. I think it's come about from reading. I haven't read as much as I should over the past few years, but I think that it's because I haven't cared for anybody else's words really, other than mine. I'm trying to find my own words, So I think that that's important. But then, yeah, it's come from reading and really, really observing life, and observing how power has been used against me and has been used for me, and has been used around me. Really paying attention to that. I don't know how it came about. It's just one of those things that I've always been interested, really interested in, and more so in the past, I would say 13 years or so. But it's everywhere we look, and I just don't have a reverence for it. Again, that might be that Mars and Capricorn in the 10th, but I don't respect authority. I don't, it's not an automatic from me, because I think that it also comes down to our understanding specifically of maybe Abrahamic religions and our concept of God. God has never scared me, but God has been used as a tool to scare other people through religion. Well, if you do this, you're bad and you're going to hell. Well, if that's the case, and hell's meant to be a bad place for people to go to, and the worst things would happen to them, one of the worst things already happened to me, being sexually abused as a child. So I've already been to hell. So you can't scare me with hell. So if that's all that God has, God's going to have to come a bit better than that. Right. And so understanding that, being able to meet God, my perception of God at a particular level, therefore meant that there was no human that I would owe reverence to who, in my eyes, hasn't earned it. I honor that we are all each other. I am you, you are me. We are all each other. We're just seeing what that can look like if we are placed in different positions and circumstances in life. We're seeing ourselves if this would have happened and that didn't happen, or you were born this way or that way. We're just really, we are the universe reflecting on itself, experiencing itself. So I can honor that, but that stops somewhere. I have to still take into account that you are still a human being and you're choosing to express yourself in this particular way. And, I look at, I temped quite a bit. I worked as like a temporary admin assistant, receptionist throughout the years because I knew I didn't want to do any sort of permanent 9 to 5 sort of role. I did not want to be there. Never really enjoyed it, but I didn't mind doing like short stints here and there. And I would go into various organizations, corporations, and I would just see the automatic reverence that people would pay to like the CEO or the line manager, and these people aren't necessarily even more experienced than you are sometimes. It was just, like you'd be in an elevator and somebody would be like, oh no, the CEO's getting in, and everyone almost cowers. You could even see in their posture, they go in on themselves. For who and for what? I've always just thought it was ludicrous. And especially when you consider companies, most times when you speak to these CEOs, they haven't got 2 brain cells to rub together, really. It's everybody else that's doing the thinking for them, but they've been able to strategize in such a way that they've gotten themselves into the positions that they're in. So it's not that I go about disrespecting people because that would be immature. I just don't hold reverence for them. And I think that when you find yourself in that space, you're able to make observations in a way that matters more. Because if I was trying to get at them, as I've done, I guess, in the past before I really, really grew to where I am now, and I've still got way more learning and growing to do, but I'm not trying to provoke them. I'm just looking at them as the very much everyday humans that they are, who have been given a particular power and responsibility that they're clearly not using properly, and they need to be told that. And you're meant to be scared because that comes with implications. It comes with consequences. But why are you here then? Like, what's the point then? For me anyway, that's what I think. Like, what's the point then? If you're not challenging systems that aren't serving you or serving those around you. Sometimes the things that I'm talking about aren't necessarily for my immediate benefit. I just see that somebody else in a far more vulnerable position than I'm in is really getting it, is really suffering. And how can I then not say anything, do anything if they, like, that's how you know how good a society is. What are the living conditions for those who are the most or seemingly the most vulnerable in that society? If they're not doing good, then that's pretty much a rubbish society.
Completely agree. And I think it's ludicrous that we're still having to argue these points when there's so much to back up the fact that basic human needs need to be given. They need to be supported. Just the basics you need, and anything other than the basics puts everybody in a fight or flight mode, and also puts everybody in danger. And that's the bit that I think people don't get, is that the way that we live now, the reason why we're always constantly in danger from everybody is because everybody is in fight or flight mode. And if you take the fight or flight mode away, everything becomes safer. Everything you're asking for, everything you desire becomes available once you take that away. That's what you're really fighting, because people don't really understand what it is that they're fighting, and it's so frustrating to see people just willfully be ignorant. I'm so glad that you spoke about your perspective around career and working and hierarchy and power, because when I first interviewed you in 2018 at your studio, that was the clip that played in my mind over and over. And nobody has ever seen it. It's just a clip that I kept.
I don't have the personality makeup of someone who can function in a hierarchical kind of system, which is what a lot of workplaces are like. A lot of office spaces, they're like that, where you must bow in reverence to the CEO, and even though he doesn't know how to tie his own shoelaces, you know, you just got to be so kind of subservient all of the time. And I just wonder, what does that do for someone's psyche? And for me, it wasn't great because I don't know how to keep quiet. So I would start a job and it would be the best job. I'd be like, it's part-time, come on Kelechi, it's part-time. You only have to be there 2 days a week. Just behave, get through your 2 days. And after 4 months, I'll be like, so, I can't stand X, Y, Z. And it's rarely even people, it's just the system that I couldn't stand. And before that, I worked in a call center because that was really flexible. I could go to auditions and things like that. It was a charity fundraising call center. And as flexible as it was, there was that same kind of hierarchy, and it was just the lies you told people. Now, we're talking about a time when I was really working so hard at being my honest self and trying to discover who I was as a person and to be as transparent as I possibly could. And I'm working somewhere where we're lying to people to get them to give £5 a month. It didn't feel right, and I couldn't carry on with it. So as soon as I got all the money I needed to do my personal training course, I left.
And when you talk about the fact that you're bowing down in reverence to a CEO and that people would suddenly change at this person coming in, and when you spoke that, you know, I've been a corporate girly for a long time, but inside I've never understood it. I was like, this is actually really weird. I don't understand why we're doing this. And also, when you spoke about it, I, for the first time, felt truly seen. That's when I really understood how powerful your mind is. Because not only did you think this, but also you were so able to freely express it and articulate it in a way that I think anybody could understand, which is a really powerful thing to do. And I think that for me was very inspiring. And I can imagine for a lot of Black women in general that you're very inspiring because of the way that you articulate the same things that either you've experienced or, like you said, you have seen other people experience, and the way that you're able to identify it and see it as a problem that needs to be solved. And for me, the hierarchy that we have in place in the world, like it's a human hierarchy. There's a book by a researcher called Bina Kandola. I don't know if you've ever read it, called Racism at Work. It's not very big. It's quite a small book. And it starts off, I think the first line is, every country that I ever went to where there were multiple races, it was the same hierarchy: white on the top and black at the bottom, and anything else in between. It pretty much starts like that. And I think I cried when I read that book, because it's a factual book. But it was the first time I'd read something that had confirmed to me that what I was actually seeing in real life, that other people were pretending was not happening, was down in a book on paper. And it was, I don't know, it's maybe 5 years old. It's not even that old, you know. So it just, the relief, and that's the relief that sometimes the things that you say and other people say, I think, have for others, which is why you're so loved and adored and supported, is because you have the ability to do that. And I know it must take a lot out of you to do it. You know, it can't be easy. I wanted to wrap up with just a couple of questions. So you spoke about that in this clip, you talk about that, you know, you and I love this clip, but I can't wait to put it in actually, because you say how, you know, you go in and then people would start liking you, be like, oh, well, don't start liking me because I'm not liking this. You know, I need to get out. I'm only here just for the money and I've got other things to do. And you had this ambition. I know you said at the beginning that you never planned anything, but from this clip, you can clearly see that you're incredibly ambitious and driven. Like, the drive that you have is incredible. So I wondered if you could share, you know, how you tapped into that drive and how you believe, this is, I think, key, believed in yourself outside of the system that everybody else kind of like lives by, and was able to carve out for yourself this journey.
Yeah, I think that some things are just innate, you know. I don't remember a specific time that I was just like, I will. I just am. I just am. There are some things that I don't know if consciously I can take credit for. It's just my makeup. I see something and I go towards it. I think I was saying to a couple that I met recently that I had like an amazing sort of spiritual experience with. And we were talking about the fact that, sometimes, I went to go and see them where they live outside of England and driving through the winding roads. And I said, I really feel called at some point to move somewhere quieter. I feel like I'm done with city life. I want to live somewhere much quieter, away from everything. So like whenever I drive through small villages, I'm like, you know what? This feels like my bag. I want to be here. And I said at the same time of having that thought, whenever I have it, I start laughing to myself because I know that I will move to that town and I give it 3 weeks. I'm going to be some kind of governor. I will just try to mind my business. I'm going to see something happen. I'll be like, okay, everyone, if you could just join me in the town square, I would just like to speak to you about 3 things that I noticed while I was here now. I'm not trying to take over. You have your rhythm. You can do what you want. However, I suggest that we, going forward, do it this way. And I will find the most powerful person in that village. I will study them and I'll be like, I'm going to take your spot, and that made me realize that it doesn't really matter where you put me. The same thing is just going to come out through me. It's just going to do it. I don't know what it is. It's just going to happen because I seem to be able to look at structures, at systems and be like, how could this benefit more people though? What can we change here to make it better? I'm not saying it's rubbish, but what could we do better so more people can benefit from it? And I like having that sense of responsibility. I like being of service to people. Before, I think an unevolved part of me would want that role to have power, to have control over people because so much of my life lacked control when I was growing up. So any situation that I find myself in, I would need to orchestrate and strategize in order to gain as much control of that situation as possible. So innately, I could protect myself. Then it's understanding that, well, those same components that make up that manifestation can be reconfigured to be of service, not just to myself, but of people those very same people. Why not be of service to them rather than trying to control them? And I think that this is ultimately what's wrong with our government systems today, where it could be of service, it's choosing to be in control. So, I don't know where the drive came from, what it is. I've just always found myself in a position where I've been responsible for things. And due to being responsible, some might call it, a psychotherapist might be listening to this and go, oh, that sounds like parentification. So I feel like there are aspects of being
parentification.
There are aspects of being a parentified child where when you were growing up, you had to take on the role of parent because your parent was unable to parent.
Okay.
Right? And so when that happens, you don't have much of a childhood. So you grow up assuming positions of responsibility because you've been conditioned to believe that that's what you should do. Take care of everyone, do everything, fix everything. So there are, on a psychological level, one might explain it in that way and say that actually you're exhibiting signs of a parentified child that's now an adult. So you go towards things that require somebody to take the mantle of responsibility so you can have more control. So whatever it is, I feel like I leave it open because I think sometimes people enter into conversations like this and they gas themselves up and they're like, I'm just so great and I figured out everything. I haven't figured out a single thing. So I'm hoping that through each thing that I experience and each way that I show up in the world, that I'm learning about myself each time. So I'm less of a dickhead and I'm more of service, like I said, not just to myself, but other people. So yeah, don't know where the drive has come from really. And in terms of ambition, I think that again, I remember always looking at, initially I was frustrated that I didn't have an English name or an Anglo-Saxon, whatever the hell European type of name. But then it got to a point where I would see my name and I'd look at it and I'd be like, that's the name of a star. Like that name is going down in history. Don't know what for. Could be infamous. Not trying to be like Hitler, but you know, Hitler's name's also gone down in history. You know, like, what's your name going down in history for?
Yeah.
Be what you're concerned about, right?
Yeah.
So I've known that this name will go down in history. What for? That's you know, that's now for me and the gods to decide.
Well, I think you are the ultimate change maker. That's why, you know, my company, The Shift, is all about making shifts. We would have called it the change maker, but I think that doesn't really serve us anymore. It is about shifting our mindsets, shifting our beliefs, etc., for us to go into a new realm, right? Which is where we need to go. But you, for me, are the ultimate change maker with everything that you do, how you execute on the things that you believe, how you use your skills and your talents to be able to make those small shifts, you know, and take so many different people along that journey with you. You know, each time you're taking different people with you. You're always going to have this core audience, but you're just able to go into different spaces and be able to do the job that many people, like you said, many people in power should be doing. But you're doing it like as a one-woman band. And I think for many people, for me, I will always be eternally grateful for that, because it's not an easy job to do. Like you said, it's not an easy job to do, but you make it look easy. So thank you.